Asthma marked Sebastian from the beginning, a constant shadow in his lungs. Breathing took effort, and effort had its limits. While other children raced and shouted across playgrounds, Sebastian watched from the edges, quiet, still, pretending not to care. He knew he couldn't keep up. Not then. Probably not ever. So rather than face the sting of lagging behind, he chose distance. It felt better to exclude himself than to be left behind by others. He leaned his back against the school's chain-link fence, watching the soccer ball bounce between teams he was never part of. When the bell rang, he lingered behind, pretending to tie his shoes, just long enough to avoid the hallway noise. That's how the invites stopped. One day, one boy forgot to ask. The next, everyone did. But solitude never crushed him, not completely. Deep inside, something else took root. While the other kids kicked balls or swapped secrets, Sebastian dreamed. He imagined disasters, floods, alien invasions, unstoppable fires, and in every vision, he was the one who stepped in and saved them all. Not because he wanted thanks, because he needed to matter. He sat by the window, hand on the joystick, eyes locked on a simulated storm. The plane bucked under digital turbulence, but he held it steady. No crowd, no praise, just the sound of engines and the imagined voice of a commander in his headset. "You did good, son. You kept them alive." Flight simulators became his sanctuary. He could spend hours soaring over virtual landscapes, engines roaring in his ears, his hands steady on the controls. His father, a pilot, shared those moments with him, teaching him angles, instruments, maneuvers. There, in the cockpit, Sebastian wasn't behind. He was in command, and always, there were planes. High school came, and the asthma mostly faded, but the isolation didn't. Even with his lungs stronger, he remained on the outside. He skipped gatherings, avoided crowds. The few invitations that came were quietly declined, and eventually, they stopped. He noticed. Of course he noticed, but he never let it break him. Instead, he doubled down on his vision. At midnight, the others slept. Sebastian was still at his desk, eyes burning with exhaustion, flipping through manuals on aerial maneuvers. His fingers traced every diagram, every footnote. His notebook overflowed with corrections, to himself, to build himself into the kind of person no one could ignore forever. The kind of man who would one day rise above them all, not with noise, but with purpose. Even in silence, Sebastian was preparing for the day the world would finally look his way. A few days before the end of classes, Sebastian walked alone, lost in thought. His steps were automatic. His mind had gone elsewhere. He was replaying a familiar fantasy, one he had visited countless times. In it, he was the hero, the savior, the one who stopped some unimaginable catastrophe, a collapsing bridge, a runaway train, an alien invasion. The details changed every time. What stayed constant was the applause. He pictured the moment in perfect detail. The crowd parting as he strode forward, their faces lit with awe. Cheers rising like a wave. Applause echoing between buildings. Smiles, nods, admiration. For a moment, he felt lighter than air, floating in the warmth of recognition, suspended above years of silence. In his mind, he could see every face. He could feel the warmth of their gratitude, read the lines of relief etched in their expressions. He imagined the texture of their clothes brushing past him, the scent of the crowd, sweat, perfume, city dust. Even their emotions felt tangible, like heat pressing against his skin. His chest swelled. Then the applause grew louder, louder still. His heartbeat quickened. Sweat gathered at his temples. The smiles began to blur, the faces melting into one another. Hands clapping became a deafening rhythm, inescapable, disorienting. The dream twisted. The air thickened. The faces leaned in, too close, too intense. They didn't feel grateful anymore. He tried to blink himself back to reality, but the applause clung to him like static wrapping around his skull. His feet stumbled. The dream wouldn't let go. The crowd closed in, eyes filled with reverence that felt like possession. Their smiles stretched too wide. He turned, tried to run, but the cheers chased him. They echoed through alleys, lived in every shadow. He had lost control. Until he stopped. He planted his feet, clenched his jaw, stood tall in the center of them. His hands shot up to cover his ears as the sound pierced his thoughts. His legs shook. His breath came in ragged gasps. He could barely feel his body, couldn't hear his own mind. So he did the only thing he could. He shut his eyes and let it all go. The fear, the shame, the need to be seen, the years of silence and breathless nights. He hurled it out of himself, raw and unchecked. And then silence. A beat later, chaos. The cheering turned to screams. The crowd that had adored him moments before now scattered in terror. People shoved, tripped, fled. Glass shattered. Voices broke. Still standing with his eyes closed, Sebastian felt the force radiating outward. It wasn't anger. It wasn't violence. It was him, raw, unfiltered, uncontained. Something deeper than thought, something alive. Something he hadn't known was there, until it demanded to be. He opened his eyes slowly. The city hadn't changed, but the people had. They stared at him, not in awe, but in fear. Some staggered back. Others clutched their heads or dropped to the pavement. The panic hung in the air, not directed at something, but from something. From him. His feet moved before his mind caught up. He turned and ran, not from the crowd, but from the realization forming in his chest. That day rewrote the boundaries of his world. As he ran, the city stretched and slowed around him. Colors dulled, sounds dimmed, as if he were plunging underwater. A pressure built behind his ribs, unfamiliar, yet terrifyingly natural. His heartbeat pounded like thunder. When he glanced back, he didn't see wreckage. He saw reactions, unfiltered, terrifying, people recoiling, crying, others running as if chased by a ghost. They weren't fleeing a disaster, they were fleeing him. Then came the revelation, slow, sharp, undeniable. The emotions, they weren't theirs. They were his emotions, amplified. And somehow he had made them feel what he felt. He traced the moment, the surge of fear, the moment he cracked. That's when the cheering collapsed into screams. The connection was clear, even if it defied explanation. His hands trembled as he stared at them. No light, no flame, no mark. But he was different. Something had awakened. Something buried beneath years of silence and breathless nights. Not a weapon, not a disease. A power, mental, primal, terrifying. And it was his. It was change. Back in the stillness of his room, far from the shattered street, the screaming crowd, and the power that had burst from him, Sebastian sat alone, eyes fixed on his trembling hands. He retraced every second, the surge, the noise, the panic, the moment where fantasy collided with reality and tore a hole through it. He hadn't meant to hurt anyone, but they had felt everything. His fear, his shame, his desperate craving to be seen. And somehow those feelings had become theirs. Not metaphorically, literally. As if his mind had forced itself into theirs, overwriting logic with raw emotion. The realization sat heavy on his chest, suffocating and electric all at once. What did I do? He didn't have a name for it. Not yet. It wasn't telepathy. It wasn't empathy. It was something deeper, stranger. His mind hadn't just read others. It had rewritten them. Was it me? He didn't know, but he needed to. That night, he didn't sleep. He scoured every scientific database he could access. Every psychological theory. Every obscure forum thread that even whispered about mental influence or shared consciousness. He took notes, cross-referenced, created diagrams. If his mind was a weapon or a bridge, he would learn its every mechanism. He had to. Because if he didn't understand what had awakened inside him, someone else would. And they might not use it with restraint. With his power awakened, Sebastian felt unstoppable. By dawn, something had shifted. No longer paralyzed by uncertainty, Sebastian rose with a clarity that cut through the noise of the night. And as he stepped back into the world, something was different. No longer limited by his body, no longer tethered to weakness, he moved through the world with sharpened clarity. He could sense the thoughts of others brushing against his awareness, hesitations, fears, intent, and with the lightest touch he could shift them, nudge a decision, tilt a thought. It was exhilarating, but it wasn't free. Each influence carried weight. Every altered outcome left a mark. The power came wrapped in responsibility and shadows. The boy who once stood on the sidelines now walked with his head high and his purpose locked in place. He didn't just pursue his dream of becoming a pilot. He owned it. His vision was no longer a fantasy. It was a mission. He applied to the Air Force with laser focus. Physical training, tactical theory, flight exams. He dominated each one. Not because it was easy, but because failure was no longer an option. He wasn't just chasing purpose, he was purpose. And he never forgot the silence, the asthma, the distance. He carried them all forward like fuel. From the moment he arrived, it was clear Sebastian wasn't just another recruit. His team, thrown together by administrative chance, became something extraordinary. Their simulations were flawless, their drills instinctive, their reaction times uncanny. They moved like a single organism. Sebastian never declared himself leader. He didn't need to. He radiated direction. His eyes missed nothing. His timing was surgical. In combat exercises, he anticipated enemy moves before they were made, adjusting mid-flight with instincts that baffled instructors. But it wasn't instinct. It was his evolving power, still hidden, still secret. Cadets whispered about them, some jealous, some inspired, most just in awe. Off the field, they became brothers. They shared meals, stories, questions, laughed, argued, dreamed, but no one, not one, knew what Sebastian carried inside him. At night, lying awake, he would stare at the ceiling or the sky and ask himself the same question. How far can I go? And deeper still, what part of me will I have to give up to get there? Their rise through the ranks felt inevitable, but with each victory, something else grew. A whisper in the back of his mind. The more I use it, the more I forget what's real. He had never wanted to influence his team. He influenced everyone else, except his friends Adrian and Dane. But in doing so, was he guiding his team, or controlling them in a more subtle way? Were their victories earned or shaped? And if he kept pushing, how long until even I can't tell the difference? He used to stand on the sidelines, unnoticed. Now the world moved to his rhythm, and he couldn't remember if that was ever the goal.